Bouncers of Reddit, have you ever crossed paths with someone you've had to throw out of a club or bar? How was the experience?
Not a bouncer but a former bartender. I had to call the cops on a couple who had become angry and violent during a Sunday brunch. Both were arrested. The husband threw a glass at me, but the wife started swinging at the cop, so she got the worst of it. Rumor has it the husband was released later that day, but the wife spent a few days in jail. A few weeks later I was in Walmart and spotted the couple. The wife didn't see me, but the husband did. We both walked away in opposite directions without saying a word. But truth be told, I was terrified.
Not a bouncer but an ex-manager, so still had to throw people out. Had one guy come back sober and apologize for his behavior, and actually thank me for throwing him out. Apparently it was a wake-up call for him, not the first time he'd been an aggressive drunk. I didn't see him again after that, so not sure if he actually changed though.
Haven't been a bouncer in about 15 years, but funny story from when I was a guy the first threw out and had to manhandle roughly. He was trying to hit me and other people, came back the next day, not to start trouble or get in again but merely to apologize and go. Seeing somebody genuinely sorry was a very rare experience. He said, and I quote asterisk, "I know I was a bit of a beep and needed a slap, I know I'm banned, I was off my nut and just wanted to say sorry and no hard feelings, asterisk." It stuck with me because he really meant it. It really doesn't go like that most of the time. Edit, I never really saw people from the clubs I worked at in my day-to-day life because the clubs I worked were way far from where I live. On purpose.
I used to bounce at a club in Annapolis, if you can call throwing drunk spoiled little rich idiots out of the bar bouncing. 3 guys I had thrown out a few weeks prior saw me in a Shoppers grocery store. They started following me, first talking beep and then throwing food at me. I left my cart, walked through the 3 of them and told them to meet me outside. They called the police, and when the police showed up the 3 stooges didn't leave the store until then. The manager lady nicely and happily explained to the police what they had done and they were arrested for throwing store items. Never saw them again. I remember one called himself Big Country, a fat sloppy idiot thrown out of the Navy for being a beep moron.
I'm not a bouncer, but in my youth I got thrown out of a bar for taking a picture of my wife. We were young then lol and were out drinking. They let women dance on the bar some nights. My wife starts doing it so I snap a pic to show her after. Never in my life have I seen so many bouncers jump onto someone, me. I got kicked out. I was able to come back later, after my wife confirmed it was me, her husband taking the photo.
I have a slightly relevant story. My brother went to uni in kind of a rough city. He was at a student bar and watched this guy get bounced. Well, he and the bouncer crossed paths again that night. The guy came back with a chainsaw. Needless to say he ruined the fun for everyone else and cops were involved. Bouncer was not injured.
Ex-pub manager here. One evening I had a group of drunken young idiots who started a fight in my pub which needless to say ended up with them getting kicked out. Fast forward a few weeks and I was having breakfast in a local cafe with one of my bar staff before opening when said group walked in and immediately recognized me, cue the verbal abuse and threatening behavior, so I finished up and left. But it did not end there. My friend had managed to keep most of the in the cafe, he half knew them, but one strolled out straight up to me and dislocated my jaw with a right hook, followed by several kicks to the back as I went down. Needless to say that day is why I no longer work in the pub trade.
I own a small restaurant with a bar and we have to 86 people a few times a year. One of them was a regular who just got a little too racist. We all hated him anyways and were just waiting for him to screw up. He did. We had to drag him out. Total scene. I see him all the time. If he's drunk, he will talk beep to me but I just walk away. He's a sad, drunk old man who's already filled with misery. Punching him in the mouth wouldn't solve anything.
Not a bouncer, but have been kicked out. Was at Marley Bar in Newtown, Sydney with some friends in 2012. I had just bought my first drink of the night and had about 2 sips when a girl in my group, who had been drinking all night, started dancing near us. Eventually she bumped into me, causing my drink to slosh a bit and spill, nothing too major. The bouncer noticed from all the way across the bar and pointed to me and beckoned me over. When I got over to this massive 6'5", 300 pounds guy, he told me I had to leave because I was too drunk. I tried to explain to him that this was only my first drink and the girl bumped into me and he wasn't having any of it. I refused to leave since I had spent $15 on a drink I had taken 2 sips of, and there was still plenty left. He took my drink and told me to wait there, returning with $15 and told me to get the beep out of the bar. Reluctantly, but with my $15 back, I decided to leave and not cause trouble. When I got outside, I called one of my friends and told him to meet me outside, where I told him what happened and asked him to switch shirts with me. I walked right up to the door and that same bouncer handed him my ID and got let in without him even recognizing me.
I was interviewed by a guy we had tossed out. I still remember his name because he was such a douchebag that we banned him after this interaction, and we all kind of laughed at his name because it fit his behavior so well. Think Kyle Blake, not his real name, but he has 2 kind of bro names as first and last. Anyway, fast forward about a year, having finished school, and I'm at a staffing agency to interview for some crappy job. In walks Mr. Blake. Unfortunately, nothing super interesting happened, but throughout the interview he acted a little strange. I never found out if he recognized me, but I was not offered the job.
I once went to a pub and realized I knew the bouncer from elsewhere. She was a nude model at an art class one attended.
Regular bar hopper here. I got cut off and asked to leave a club a couple times for being too drunk. It was a regular party place for me. Get hired a couple years ago at a serving job and I'm talking to the manager, just having a chat after the job offer. We both realize we know the other. He was the bouncer who asked me to leave. Had a good laugh about it. We had friends in common too. It was a small city, 300, 0**0**ish, a lot of students, and the restaurant club scene wasn't huge. So me working in the industry also meant that the people I partied with were also the bouncers and bartenders that served us. Edited for clarity.
Sweet girl came up to me at the mall. Said I threw her out because she was sloppy drunk. Asked me if she could come back. Apparently she took me saying, "Don't come back, as don't ever come back here."
I was a bouncer in a higher-end Toronto club in 2000-2001. People were generally respectful and just out to have a fun night. The only real memorable ejection was from a couple we caught having sex in the ladies' washroom. It was very awkward. We had to ensure that it was consensual, and ask them to stop, and then escort them out. Because the bathroom facilities were limited to 3 or 4 stalls per gendered washroom, there was a long line up for the ladies' room. The couple then had to do the walk of shame past the long washroom line up. They were then escorted from the establishment.
It happened fairly frequently with the regulars. As long as they weren't fighting, they'd be allowed back in the next night. Usually they were pretty embarrassed, and apologized for being a drunken jackass. One time I did have to kick out a good friend because he got in a fight. He was in a bad place, and was pretty embarrassed by the whole thing. We didn't really talk about it much afterwards. That was over a decade ago, and we're still friends today, and he's settled down and doesn't drink like he used to.
I bounced for years. I've never ran into anyone I removed from the bar. If I did, I didn't recall them. Have a boring true answer.
Former bouncer here. Yes, it has happened. They normally just avoid eye contact.
I used to work with a guy who was a bouncer where he told me that he used to work at a club where a local gang would hang out. He said that he'd tolerate them as long as they didn't start any trouble until one day one of them showed up with a serrated bread knife and threatened to stab him if he didn't let them through.
Got thrown out of a bar for stopping a friend of mine from finishing a fight. Wasn't even there with him. Bouncer was cool and asked me what happened. Then said I'd have to leave with my friend. Chugged my beer and said see ya next weekend.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.